Men have been getting their teeth kicked in by the feminist movement and all of its ripple effects for a while now. And it used to be that, outside of a few pockets of resistance here and there, most guys just sort of went along with it. But that's starting to change in a pretty dramatic way. For those who are new to the conversation, it's gone a little something like this. Hey, we want equal rights. Okay, done. And we want to be real citizens. Fantastic. You got it. Who can own property. Awesome. And we want equal representation in the workforce. Jobs kind of suck, but hey, if that's really what you want, it's less work for me, I guess. No, actually, we only want the prestigious jobs and the high-paying ones. We don't want to have to do anything dirty, dangerous, disgusting, or uncomfortable, or anything like that. So you guys are going to have to keep, hauling the garbage, treating the sewers, and yeah, you guys are going to have to do all of that on your own. Okay, will you at least show us some appreciation for doing all that, or? No, actually, we're not gonna let anybody talk about it because we still need everybody to think that we have it worse than you. Otherwise, people wouldn't support us, and then we actually might start to feel guilty about the way that we're treating you now. So, okay, we'll go along with that, but does that mean that we're cool? No, not close. Actually, we want to be treated with the highest respect at all times. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No problem. That's also, we want to be the ones that are actually in charge in a relationship, but we still want you guys to take all the consequences whenever things go wrong. Yeah, you can be in charge, sure. You got to check with the boss, right? And I'll handle the consequences. Not a big deal. Are we good now, or what? Oh, speaking of relationships, we don't really find very many of you to be attractive, so we're going to need you guys to work really, really hard to meet our standards, but we kind of don't want to do any work to become anything that you would want. Yeah, because that would be demeaning to us. So, that's not really fair, but okay, if that'll make you happy. And we want the legal system to work in our favor kind of all the time. And we want schools and churches to cater primarily to us. Oh, okay. We also want to emasculate and humiliate men in all forms of media, movies, television, all of that stuff. And we want to elevate ourselves at men's expense, preferably. I hate myself at this point anyway, so you might as well. Is that enough now, or? No. We're gonna call men toxic for displaying any kind of strength, but we want to be called strong and empowered anytime we're being harsh or arrogant or domineering or whatever else we want to be. That kind of sucks. But hey, if that'll finally make you happy with us and you'll start to like us again, then hey, you go, girl boss. Like you again? No, we're actually pretty happy to see men struggling with mental health and unaliving themselves twice as much as us, while we continue to put men down, ridicule them, and falsely accuse all men of the crimes of a few men. Because hold up, no, this has gone way too far. We're done. This is not okay anymore. This has to stop. It used to be that most guys actually bought into the narrative that we're all these oppressors who've been taking advantage of women for thousands of years, and we felt guilty about that. And so whatever punishments women wanted to do to us, we just sort of let it happen. And also, men genuinely wanted to see women thrive and be happy. So we tried to change laws and give them favorable opportunities and advantages over us, and we let them treat us pretty badly for quite a while, hoping that that would make them feel better and that the feminists would be happy with that and that we'd have peace again, because that's what we really wanted. But that's not what happened, was it? No, instead, things got worse. No matter how much men gave in to them or did for them, didn't matter. They just got angrier and fought harder and demanded more. And it used to be that only a handful of men resisted this, but now that the doctrines of feminism have become the accepted standard of the land, even among conservatives in some pretty sneaky ways, which we'll get into in the next video, so subscribe if you want to see that when it comes out. But now that that's all happened, we're starting to see millions of men band together in a wave of backlash against the feminist movement. Guys are fed up with the way that they've been treated for the last 50-ish years, and at this point, they're not pushing back. They're fighting back, and they're not being kind about it. And as a Christian, I think it would be pretty naive of us to assume that, oh, this is all just outside the doors of the church and that Christians aren't affected by this stuff at all. So today I want to take a quick look back through the history that led up to this so we can figure out how we got into this mess, where things might be headed next, and how we might be able to resolve things in a healthier way. So for most of human existence, there was no such thing as a commute to work. And I know that's kind of a weird place to start, but it'll make sense in a second. For most people, whether you were a farmer or a blacksmith or whatever, you lived where you worked. So most families worked together as a cohesive unit to survive. And yes, men and women did different tasks a lot of the time, but they worked side by side for the most part. But then we industrialized, and instead of working side by side on the farm, men started leaving the home to go work in the factory or the mine or the plant or the shop or the office or whatever it was. And for the first time in human history, we separated men and women completely for most of their waking hours. Now, why did just the men go off to work? Because this is kind of an important point. Now, feminism, of course, says that this was to maintain patriarchal power and dominate women, by controlling the flow of money. And it's an interesting idea that might have a shred of truth to it somewhere in there. I don't know how you'd prove that or disprove it either way. What we do have data on from those times, though, is that most jobs were painfully hard and very dangerous, and working conditions were generally terrible for almost everyone. Most historical evidence says that going to work wasn't a power play. It was a sacrifice. Men would literally sacrifice their bodies to provide for their wife and kids. And for a long time, it was generally accepted that men kind of got the short end of the stick in this deal. So you didn't see a whole lot of complaints from women at first. I mean, the feminist movement didn't really have a ton of support from women at first either. But if it was an objectively better deal for women, for the men to go off to work at first, what happened? How did we end up here? Well, a few things changed. First of all, jobs got safer and more comfortable.
Women timed the fight for equality brilliantly. Men, we were fighting lions and tigers and hunting buffalo, and women were like, we'll just pick the berries. You guys got that. That's... You guys, all right. You guys are brave. Look at... Wow. Second they put air conditioning in office buildings, women are like, we want equality. You played the long game, ladies. Well done. Well done.
Second, because men and women couldn't see what each other was doing all day anymore, they lost empathy for the effort and the pain that the other person had to bear. And this has led to a lot of resentment building up on both sides. But if we're honest, it seems like it's affecting women quite a bit more. Because, think about how much content you still see out there of women complaining about men and how he doesn't contribute enough around the house, he doesn't check out the trash and do the dishes. But you never see the reverse. You never see men at work complaining about how lazy their wife is or how she doesn't contribute enough. I think as guys, we figured out a while ago that when we complain about how hard our lives and our jobs are, we get shouted down, guilt-tripped, and shamed until we submit. And so most men, just for the sake of keeping the peace, we just don't bring it up. All that to say that men and women can't see what each other's doing all day anymore. And that seems to have led to women in particular building up quite a lot of extra resentment towards men. And third, and I think this is probably the most important thing, our culture started worshiping a new, old god, power, personal power, to be precise. I talk more about this in the video that I did on the Barbie movie, but basically our culture believes that your life can only be good if you have power, because we equate power with value, meaning your life is only worth something if you're in control of every aspect of it. On top of that, the belief is that you need power in order to make good things happen in your life. So on the flip side, if you don't have power, you're worthless and your life is meaningless and you can't affect any positive changes. And anytime a person has power over you, that means that they're automatically oppressing you and taking advantage of you, right? Because they're holding you back and they're using you to make their own life flourish and for their life to be meaningful and valuable. Most of us believe that your worth is equal to your place on the hierarchy. So if women are ever lower than men, that means they're worth less, which is demeaning. And that means they won't be able to enjoy their lives. Of course, all of that is fundamentally untrue. Like, your value doesn't come from your ranking on any scale. Your value, your meaning, joy in your life all come from your identity as a child of God. Honestly, I'll take that over power any day of the week, because my status in God's family isn't going anywhere. It's secure. I don't have to stress about it, as opposed to my spot on the power rankings, which I'm always going to have to fight for. And who knows when somebody's going to take it away from me. Right? This is why it's been such a big deal in movies for all these strong female characters to be shown as hyper competent and aggressive and harsh edged and masculine, because that to them looks like power. And that's how they believe that they're going to shape the next generation of young girls into becoming what men used to be. They're trying to secure power for themselves and their daughters, because that's their only hope for happiness. And on the flip side, that's why men have to be shown to be weak and ineffectual and impotent and too stupid to get anything right, because male competence is a threat to female power. And again, if we just swap out the word power for value or happiness, it makes a lot more sense why so many women started to build up this wave of resentment towards men that led to the feminist movement. They wanted to rise up and get out from under those perceived oppressors, which has some merits to it, especially the way that things started off in this country with women's rights. But getting free wasn't enough, was it? All that bitterness and resentment wasn't being satisfied. No, they needed revenge for that, or at least so they thought. So long after they'd won their freedom and equality, they had to keep fighting to subvert and to punish and to make men suffer. Men like to have peace when they get home from a long day at a tough job? No, can't have that. No, women need to be loud and brash and disagreeable and fight with him and argue with him about everything. Second guess every decision that he makes. Men like to see attractive, feminine women? No. Get rid of them. Body positivity. All women need to either be overweight or look as masculine as possible. And you're a sexist pig if you say that you prefer anything besides those two options. Equality in the job market? No. We want the prestigious jobs and the high-paying jobs to go to women. Whether they're good at the job or not doesn't matter. And we want to turn men into this sort of de facto servant class. The list goes on. And we did go along with that for a long time. But no matter how much we tried to give those women what they demanded, it was never enough to satisfy their hunger for power and revenge. Kind of like how Andrew Carnegie was asked how much money is enough money. He replied, just a little more. That also seems to be the feminist answer. How much more do men need to suffer and give to you? And the answer is just a little more. And we went along with this willingly because we really did believe that we deserved this. We bought into the narrative that we're all these terrible, oppressive monsters that deserve to be treated badly. So we fast forward to today, and it's becoming pretty obvious at this point. The appeasement strategy isn't working. And now men are abandoning the appeasement strategy in favor of all-out combat, right? They've gotten so tired of all this stuff that they're beginning to snap back in a major way, right? They're tired of being told that they're inherently oppressive or bad or problematic or icky or gross. They're tired of being treated like worthless peasants and resented for stuff that they didn't do. They're tired of having to jump through a ton of hoops in the dating market only to find that hardly any women even respond to them. More than anything, they're tired of no one listening. Now they're beginning to snap. Podcasts of the crimson-pilled persuasion have started popping up all over the place and putting the data out there about what men are going through. And now men are starting to go, oh, hey, I'm not crazy. This is real. And they're starting to build up resentment towards women. You add to that a whole lot of sexual frustration because of delusionally high female standards in the dating world, and you've got a volatile mixture. So that's how we got to where we are now. But where is all of this headed? I mean, it's going to depend on how we react to it, but more than likely, it's going to be painful. At this point, the feminist movement has so much popular support for its doctrines and so much momentum behind it that it will cause conflict and problems for men for years to come, no matter how we address it. Now, as a Christian, I'm primarily interested in what's going to happen to the church here in all of this, because young men have already started to notice that nearly every church has given into feminist doctrine, at least to some degree. And I mean, if we're honest, even conservative churches cater primarily to women. And that kind of makes young men, especially who are aware of what's going on out there, it makes them feel uncomfortable and unwelcome at church. It doesn't feel safe there. And on top of that, a lot of young Christian men are tired of being treated poorly all the time, and they're really tired of getting rejected by all the girls at the church all the time. And they're starting to notice that their own people at the church, their leaders, aren't helping them with the problems they're facing, because they either don't see it or they're actually actively working against them. And then they see these other groups of people on the internet who actually do sympathize with them, and they're fighting to do something about their problems. So they end up looking at this going, these people aren't helping me. This is not good. These people are helping me. I'm out of here. So they leave the church and go where they can get help. And by help, I don't mean oh, Jesus loves you, just wait for him to fix it. I mean, hey bud, here's what you do. Now, I can kind of see this going one of two ways in the future. One, the church kind of continues to go on without really addressing it. And young men just keep leaving the church until it withers away. Young men, as far as I can see, are the most important demographic to the church. We need their strength, their tenacity, their fortitude, their vision, their drive, their energy, even their aggression. But they're the ones leaving faster than anyone else. So we could just continue to see this trend go on until we lose the young men and everything they bring to the table, and then the church in North America just dies out to the point that it ends up looking as anemic and dead as the church in Europe. And if we really believe that that can't happen to us, then we are arrogant fools who need an ego check as fast as possible. The other thing we could see, the other direction this could go, we could start to see that backlash wave start to rise up from inside the church. Right now, Gen X, like 60 years old-ish, and older millennials, like 40s-ish, those are the people in leadership in most churches. But it's not going to stay that way, right? We're going to see Gen Z come up and take over in leadership eventually. Now, those generations, the older guys, they were kind of the last ones to have it easy-ish in the dating world and in the battle between the sexes. So they're largely isolated from the problems Gen Z are facing. And for a lot of them, it's as if those problems are so completely different from anything they even have a box in their brain for that they just can't get in sync with it. And so they don't really address it. And even when they do, they oftentimes tend to come down on the women's side of it, as we've discussed. So what we could see happen is that once Gen Z gets into leadership in the church, and you have a bunch of young men who grew up in a culture where it was normal to be spurned by literally every woman that you talked to, and all of the frustration that comes along with that, that could get carried in to church leadership along with it. And you could start to see the backlash wave come from within the church itself, just sort of on a delayed timer from the rest of the world. And of course, this is all speculation, but that's what I see happening if we just keep the comfy status quo going. So, begs the question, what should we do? I mean, of course, God can intervene or reset things if he wants to, and that's something I think we should be praying for. But what about on our end? Is there anything we can do to take this head on and steer it towards a healthier outcome? And this is the part that I need your help with, so get ready with your comments, because I don't pretend to have all the answers. I will give you my hunches, though. Well, the first thing is we need to take the high road. We need to be bigger than the problems instead of letting them drag us down into this whole cycle of resentment and combat between the sexes. And the only way to do that is to replace our own resentment with grace. Now, to be clear, it's not wrong to feel the frustration that we do a lot of times as guys, because those wounds are very real. That's very real stuff being done to you. How we respond to our feelings, that's what's going to make all the difference in the world. Now, it's pretty clear at this point that we can't get rid of women's resentment towards us or their desire for power by trying to appease them or by trying to scold them and shame them for it. Neither of these tactics are working. So, be the better man. Be bigger than the problem and extend grace instead of resentment. Second, we need to start telling the truth about authority and leadership. As far as God is concerned, human authority isn't about superiority. It's about responsibility. From the very beginning, we see that even though it was Eve that ate the forbidden fruit first, Adam was the one who was held responsible. And it says in Romans that through Adam's sin, we all sin, not through Eve's. Adam was the one in charge, and he was the one held responsible for the outcome of that situation. If God puts you in a position of power, you're going to be under a lot more scrutiny. Biblical authority doesn't mean that you're going to make every decision all the time, but it does mean that if the wrong decisions get made on your watch and bad things happen as a result, you're the one that's held accountable by God for the outcome of that situation. So authority is a way for you to steer those outcomes towards the best possible things, but it's also a burden that you bear for the benefit and protection of the people that God's put into your care. And the other side of the feminist coin isn't true either. Being under authority isn't a denigrating or shameful position. It's a place of safety and security that's designed to enhance your life's flourishing, not take it away. And yes, a lot of men have misused that authority for their own selfishness, and they've done a lot of horrible things to their families as a result. Those men do deserve justice for their actions. But the problem in those cases isn't the system or the hierarchy. The problem is the character of the men in those positions. Now, it's funny to me that some feminists are starting to realize this and turn away from feminism and back towards trad life, as it were. Because once you realize that, hey, authority isn't a position of honor or veneration, and you're not actually worth some more, you don't feel like your life is valuable, it's not easier, it's actually quite a bit harder, and you're the one that's held accountable for every bad thing that happens under your watch, yeah, it's not so appealing anymore. A lot of women are starting to realize the grass was never greener. And now that they're being forced to live like men, they're starting to backpedal and go, oh, hey, guys, actually, we kind of messed up. Can we go back to, when you guys were taking care of us? Because that was really nice. So we need to recognize the truth about authority and leadership. The third thing is that men need to take back leadership. And I don't mean by force. I mean by becoming men that people want to follow. A pastor of mine always says that a leader isn't someone who holds a particular title or office. It's someone who, when you look behind them, people are following them. And you can become that. Now, for me, that looks like a person who places God at the center of their life and fully submits to his authority first before exercising any of their own, and looking out for the people that are under their care second, and then placing themselves third. It's kind of a leader that I want to follow, and that's the kind of leader that I strive to be. So no more of this like, oh, well, if it's all right with you, like maybe we might want to think about doing this. No, we need to get back to being strong and decisive and confident, and stop being so apologetic about having authority and being in leadership. But also, we absolutely need to become good enough at the skills of leadership and the relational aspects of it so that people want to follow us instead of begrudgingly trundling along behind and building up resentment the whole time. Now, you might say that you're not a leader, that God didn't call you to that role, but biblically, every man who wants to have a family has an obligation to this, right? If you're going to be the head of a household, which you will be if you're a husband, you have an obligation to lead in a way that your family feels safe and guided under your leadership instead of frustrated or anxious or uncertain, so that they can flourish under your care. And again, it all starts by submitting yourself fully to God's authority and building up your leadership skills from there. So that's my thoughts. What are yours? Leave them down in the comments. What do you guys think we can do to resolve this and bring men and women back together where they're the healthiest, where they're the most effective? Because honestly, I think men and women can only thrive when we're working side by side. So how can we get back to that in a God-honoring way? Let me know. That's all I got. Stay weird. See you next time. Peace.